Good morning. Welcome to United First Parish Church. Whoever you are, whomever you love, welcome to our Unitarian Universalist spiritual community. We are delighted to welcome anyone who may be visiting with us this morning. You can learn more about our community by going to our website, www.ufpc.org. I'm the Reverend Rebecca Froom. Our worship leaders this morning on screen and behind screen include our Director of Religious Education, Joan McDonald, our digital usher, Clyde Courtright, as well as the Terrell Wozani family who will be sharing a chalice lighting reading. And for our music this morning, I am very excited that we are continuing our annual pre-Thanksgiving tradition of having violinist Jagan Khalsa serve as a guest musician. And once again, he and our music director, Norman Corey, were able to collaborate and are performing wonderful duets for our service this morning. The order of service can be downloaded from our UFPC website, and we will be pasting the hymn lyrics into the chat as we go along. For these online services, we invite you to go ahead and leave your video on so that we might see one another when folks are in gallery view and be together even though we're physically apart. Note, we are recording this morning's service to be posted on YouTube at a later date. If you would prefer not to be seen in the recording, please turn your video off. And also, if you are having a poor connection at any point, you can experiment with turning your video off and see if that makes your connection a little better. We invite everyone to stay online after the service for our virtual social hour. Our social hour includes the option of breakout groups to reflect on the theme of today's service. And now let us lift our hearts to prepare ourselves for worship. And we begin by acknowledging that our church building stands in the traditional territories of the Neponset tribe of the Massachusetts people, the original nations of the land that is now called Quincy, who continue to cry out for justice and self-determination. Our call to worship this morning is by Laura Harbour Ludwig, adapted. The wheel of the year has turned again. Once more, the Thanksgiving season has arrived. How shall we sing our song of gratitude this year? For what shall we give thanks? For this moment, for friends both near and far, for our breath, for love, for courage and clarity, for strength, for delight, for laughter, for beauty, for the tables around which we gather, for the screens around which we gather, for the food we enjoy seasoned with love and memory, for the sun and the moon and the stars in the sky, for the trees that have seen so much and still stand proud, stretching themselves to the sky, for the bright voices of children, for the wisdom of elders, for actions that bless the world, for hard work that makes a difference, for music and art and celebration, for generosity, for compassion, for endurance, for joy, for hope. For all these things, we give thanks as we worship together. For our chalice lighting this morning, I invite folks to, if you have a candle or a chalice in your own home, to go ahead and get that. And Jill, Simo, Mesa, and Layla will be sharing a reading as we light our chalices this morning.
You want to go ahead and light? Good morning. We light our chalice as a symbol of gratitude as we celebrate the abundance of our lives together. In this sanctuary, we harvest bushels of strength. In this online sanctuary, we harvest bushels of strength for one another and offer our crop with the hands of compassion and generosity.
In the authentic and gentle manner of our connections, we cultivate a simple sweetness to brighten our spirits. May we be grateful for the ways we nourish and uplift each other, for it is the sharing of this hallowed time together that sustains us.
Thank you. I invite folks to join in reading our words of covenant, which will appear on the slides. As a free fellowship of this historic church, we unite to lift our hearts and open our minds to a larger reality, to accept, support, and encourage one another, to seek the wisdom in all religions, to cherish and sustain the web of life, and to strive for justice, compassion, and peace. Our opening hymn this morning is number 349, We Gather Together. We will paste the lyrics in the chat. Let us lift our voices in song.
We gather together in joyful thanksgiving, acclaiming creation whose bounty we share. Both sorrow and gladness we find now in our living. We sing a hymn of praise to the life that we bear. We gather together to join in the journey, confirming, committing our passage to me, our true affirmation in joy and tribulation, when bound to human care and toil, then we are free.
Walking the cranberry bogs. Yesterday, my dog Chloe and I took our daily walk in the cranberry bogs. We've been walking these bogs for over a year now, and I sense the rhythm of the year in these bogs. Last fall, when we moved here, the bog was filled with life, bright green cranberry bushes holding the deep red berries sheltered under them. I watched with fascination as the bogs were filled with water to aid in the harvest. A tractor gliding through the bog, combing up the berries. The wind blowing berries together, and later a boom corrals them in a huge red circle. Soon, workers waist deep in berries and water suck the berries up with what looks like a vacuum cleaner, pouring them into the back of an 18-wheeler that, when almost overflowing, carries them to a warehouse to be sorted. Our walks move into winter. The bogs are often filled with water to protect the plants from the cold frost. Chloe and I walk briskly along pathways, sometimes dusted in snow or frozen white puddles that crunch under our feet. Canada geese, mallard ducks, and a great blue heron occupy the bogs as we walk. The heron often takes off for a quiet corner when we disturb it. The wind whips across the barren fields and we quicken our steps, hoping to find some protection from the biting wind. Sometime in the winter, I noticed that Chloe has started to slow down on our walks. What used to be me running to keep up with her as she marches forward, I found that I was pulling her along, and our walks became shorter and shorter. As spring moved in early in the morning before the fog is burned off of the bogs, dozens of arcs of water rise out of the bog, irrigating the berry bushes. The sun burns off the fog and peepers and crickets can be heard, filling the bog with their chirping. One afternoon, I look out my window at the hum of a helicopter. Back and forth, it rises and falls along the bogs. It's the annual clearing the drainage canals of muddy muck the helicopter rising above the bogs, carrying a dripping mass of sludge to some far off mud pile. Events in the world feel overwhelming, and a walk in the bogs should help relieve the worry. As the pandemic ravages our world, I mourn the loss of my father-in-law, Don. Chloe is still not well, and I struggle to feel normal after an embolism. Our forays out into the bog are shorter. Afraid of finding myself in a medical emergency in the middle of the bog. But over time, I get stronger, increasing our walks, still tugging Chloe along with me. The wind rarely slows down on the bogs. The hum of traffic on the pavement is constant, but I can usually filter that out. I record sounds of the bog for the children's chapel. A cacophony of frog, bird, cricket calls fill my ears. The wind whistles through the tall grass and rustles the leaves in the wood. I'm feeling stronger and pull Chloe along with me, holding my phone up in the air, capturing the sound. There's a continuity of life in the bogs, from the fall harvest that I first witnessed when I arrived, through to the frigid winter and the uncertainty of this past spring, summer, fall. Yesterday, Chloe pulls me along down the sidewalk and onto the sandy bog path. She regularly stops and sniffs the air, turns looking back from where we came from. She then pulls me over to a pile of loose cranberry leaves and bright red cranberries, discards from the harvest. Today, the bog is filled with water. The wind blows the detritus of the harvest, bright berries floating with brown leaves. As we round a particular corner of the bog, I wonder whether she remembers our adventure of earlier this summer. On a sunny morning on a Sunday, we strolled along and were suddenly stung by bees, and we had to run and find a long, rerouted walk back home. So today I stop and lift my face towards the sun, feeling the warmth and the wind, hearing the crow call, and Chloe panting beside me. Today it is a beautiful fall day. Our hour in the bog is almost over, and I am filled with a momentary joy that Chloe is back to her old self, and I feel stronger, that the isolation, grief, and uncertainty in the world was held back. I'm reminded of the first lines in a Mary Oliver poem I read earlier this week. "Don't hesitate," she wrote. "If you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate and give into it."
Let us take a deep breath together as we open our hearts for the sharing of our joys and sorrows. This is a time for us to briefly but fully share those life milestones that lift our spirits in joy or hope, or the pains and losses that fill us with heartache. As we enter this time of sharing, I light a candle of joy, knowing that a joy shared is a joy magnified, and also a candle of sorrow, knowing that a sorrow shared is a sorrow diminished. If you wish to acknowledge a joy or sorrow from your heart, I invite you to raise your hand and unmute your microphone when our digital usher, Clyde Courtwright, calls you by name. Let us open our hearts to one another. As we end our sharing, I will light a final candle, representing all of those joys and all of those sorrows that we hold silently in the sanctuary of our hearts. May the light of these candles and the compassion of this community remind us that wherever we are on our journey, each of us is worthy of love, and each of us is able to love. Let us take a deep breath together, feeling that spirit of life, that spirit of love that moves within, between, and beyond us all. Let us take a deep breath together, rolling our shoulders back, perhaps wiggling our fingers or toes, releasing whatever we might be holding in our hands, releasing tension we might be holding in our jaw, releasing at least a little bit those burdens we carry in our hearts. So together, let us breathe in and breathe out as we appreciate the gift of this day, the gift of this moment. And breathing together, let us enter a time of shared sacred silence. Will you lift your hearts and join me in the spirit of prayer, listening in these words for the language of faith most meaningful to you? Our prayer includes a prayer by Reverend Molly Hausch Gordon. Eternal presence, known by many names, known in many ways. Source of our being, source of our goodness. We join our hearts today in a swirl of gratitude and grief. We join our hearts in deepest grief for the 255,000 lives lost to COVID-19 these last 8 months. Some of them our very own dear ones, all of them beloved. We hold in tender care all who are sick, all who are fearfully quarantined or awaiting test results, and all who are worried for their loved ones or themselves. We hold in deepest concern all healthcare workers stretched to the brink and facing untold trauma. We mourn with all those who are grieving in isolation. We lament with everyone struggling to stay housed and fed, abandoned by the systems that should catch and hold us in the crisis moment. And we join our hearts in gratitude for all the blessings of our lives, for what food and shelter we do have, for caring neighbors, strangers, friends, for loved ones whose precious, unlabored breathing we no longer take for granted, for technology that connects us, for all the ways that we have found to reach out to one another in mutual support and material interconnection. Together we grieve. Together we are grateful. On this Thanksgiving weekend, we join our hearts in confession and lament for the sins of our faith forebears, those pilgrims who landed on the shores they called Plymouth 400 years ago, bringing their own hope for religious freedom and visiting betrayal and death on the free people of this land. We lament the role our faith had in covering over that truth with comforting false stories and wishful histories. We witness the grief of those indigenous peoples still here, still sovereign, who mark the day our government calls Thanksgiving as a day of mourning. And with the teachings of those very same people, alongside each of our ancestors, among the ancients of every tradition, we give thanks for this harvest time, for the abundance of the earth and the human urge across millennia to feast through lean times fast approaching. We give thanks for all who grow and harvest and prepare the food that sustains our bodies every day. We give thanks for the opportunity to devote a day to rest and gratitude and the ties of love and kinship that bind families of blood and of choice, no matter how we find this year to mark the day. Together we grieve. Together we are grateful. We mourn all of the limitations placed on our traditions and connections as pandemic surges across the country. Our hearts are with all of the millions who will be physically separated from their loved ones this week, including many of us. Our hearts are with those who will eat alone, longing for their beloveds. Our hearts and our solidarity and support are with those who have been shut out of the abundance that should be for all. And we give thanks for the faithfulness of the seasons and the beauty of the earth, for our attention to small moments of delight close in, and for the boundlessness of the human spirit, which can hardly be kept from stubborn celebration. We give thanks for Zoom gatherings and porch drop-offs and pie swaps and pen pals and care packages, for all the ways our perpetual drive to connection sustains us, even through the greatest of trials. Together we grieve. Together we are grateful. With all of these, and with the silent yearnings of our hearts, we join in prayer and love. Amen, and blessed be. Our reading this morning is from the poet Joy Harjo. It is titled, Perhaps the World Ends Here. Joy Harjo is a poet and an author. She is currently the poet laureate of this country, and she is a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation. She writes, "The world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. The gifts of earth are brought and prepared, set on the table. So it has been since creation, and it will go on. We chase chickens or dogs away from it. Babies teethe at the corners. They scrape their knees under it. It is here that children are given instructions on what it means to be human. Our dream, and at this table we gossip, recall enemies and the ghosts of lovers. Our dreams drink coffee with us as they put their arms around our children. They laugh with us at our poor falling down selves, and as we put ourselves back together once again at the table. This table has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun. Wars have begun and ended at this table. It is a place to hide in the shadow of terror, a place to celebrate that terrible victory. We have given birth on this table and have prepared our parents for burial here. At this table, we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks. Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying and eating of the last sweet bite. This year marks 400 years since the people we know of as the Pilgrims sailed across the Atlantic Ocean on the Mayflower. 400 years this month since they arrived in the place we now know as Provincetown. They were sick, they were hungry, they were lost, having meant to go to Virginia. They did not know where to spend the winter and eventually made their way to a place known as Plymouth. And during that winter, half of the population died. And on this land that they named Plymouth Colony, there lived indigenous people for thousands of years, the Wampanoag, who still live on this land. And they had suffered even greater casualties from disease and hardship in the decades before the Pilgrims arrived. Looking back, it's believed that about 90% of the indigenous population of what is now Massachusetts, and indeed most of what is now the Americas, about 90% died from illness, enforced slavery, and more. Diseases such as smallpox that had never been seen by the immune systems of the indigenous Americans decimated the population. 90%. And into this moment of grief and hardship, of unknown futures as new cultures made contact, there is a harvest festival. We do know that back in 1621, there was a harvest festival of some kind. And of course, as we heard in our prayer, we yearn for this. People of all backgrounds yearn for the opportunity to come together, to eat food, to share gratitude, to celebrate the goodness and the abundance of the earth and of those we love. Eco-theologian Joanna Macy speaks of a spiral map for transformative change. She calls it the work that connects, the spiritual, ethical, relational work that connects. And in this spiral, she begins with gratitude. That in the work that connects, in our work for transformative change, we must always begin by grounding ourselves in gratitude. And from that grounding, move into the second step of the spiral journey, which is naming the pain, naming the loss, naming the suffering around us, be it the loss, the suffering, the pain that comes from the pandemic of COVID, from the pandemic of racism, the lament as we look at climate change. Any form of meaningful change requires the truth-telling of all that is hurt, of all that is broken. And of course, that truth-telling, it can exhaust us. It can drain us. It can wrap us in guilt and disappointment and overwhelm such that we are paralyzed. And so in this moment, we return to that grounding in gratitude. This is what Macy teaches. You can always go back to gratitude wherever else you are in your journey of growth and change. Gratitude is always there, offering itself as a starting point. And so in this time where we see so much suffering, so much pain, these rising numbers of caseloads and deaths, Thanksgiving again offers us a moment to return to gratitude. Gratitude for the food we do have. Gratitude for this earth in which this food was grown. Here in New England, many of the traditional foods of Thanksgiving are truly native, indigenous to this ecology. As we heard in Joan's reflection, the cranberry bogs, the other plants, the other foods, the other trees that are parts of what is now New England, the rhythm of the earth, the rhythm of growing food is always there for us to be thankful for. And I'm grateful for Joan's sharing, for the images as we saw her own journey between grief and gratitude by way of connecting to this earth that is always there. So in this pandemic time, when many of us are keeping a loving distance from one another, we feel the grief of not being together, perhaps separated by death, illness, separated by isolation. And there is real grief here, a lot to be sad for. And as we let ourselves see and feel all that is broken, all that we grieve, all of the missed milestones, all of the missed grandparents, all of the missing of seeing the young people in our life grow, behind each of those losses is something to be grateful for. When we miss someone, it is so often because we love them. When we miss being able to share recipes that we inherited or creatively created, we miss the experience of sharing the gift of food, of sharing the gift of our passions for cooking. We miss sharing all of the memories that come with those foods. And even as we grieve all that is different this Thanksgiving season and find challenging and innovative ways to nonetheless be together, heart to heart, it's important to remember the gratitude behind each of those losses. And gratitude is a tricky thing. Gratitude can happen at a deep, deep level. And it can also be something that kind of glosses over the hurt. Our Thanksgiving story continues not so much in 1622 or in the 1650s as we have increasing war between the white colonizers and the indigenous people of the land. The story of Thanksgiving continues in 1863 when President Abraham Lincoln made it a national holiday. In the midst of a civil war, when people are literally killing one another, he creates this holiday to celebrate unity, community, food. And gratitude is so complicated. Of course, there's this yearning to be grateful for food and community, even in the hardest of times in a civil war. And yet, it seems rather rushed, creating a holiday of unity in a time of division. And as America painted a picture of the first Thanksgiving, memorialized that moment into a national holiday, we can see who was painted into that picture of unity and community, and who was not given a space at the table in the American myth of Thanksgiving. The Reverend Molly Hausch Gordon, whose beautiful prayer we heard this morning, wrote in a blog post earlier this month after the election. The post was called "Healing the Nation, for Whom?" She writes, "The real work was never about who is in electoral office. It has always had to do with telling the truth about who we are as a nation and awakening imaginations drugged by small comforts into accepting large brutalities. The work was always building beautiful, flourishing alternatives to the systems that deal us death. The work was always showing up at the margins with humility, love, and resources." She continues, "And let's be careful not to accept the small luxuries that cloud our faithful dreaming of the world made new. Together, we can always dream more thriving than the powers that be will deliver to us, no matter who is in power. It is our job to keep imagining." It is our job to keep imagining. In this very strange Thanksgiving season, what do we imagine for Thanksgiving next year and in the years to follow? Who will be at the Thanksgiving table in our homes, our communities, in the halls of power in Washington, D.C. and beyond? It is our job to keep imagining. And what do we imagine for this corner of the earth, for this country, for the next 400 years? Joy Harjo tells us that this table where so many have been born, so many have grown up, where so many have shared their joys, their sorrows, their disappointments, that this table is a place where we can come back together again. And so it is important that the people at the table are as diverse as the people in this country, the people in this world, that we all take turns cooking and eating, serving the drinks, cleaning the dishes, sharing the recipes, growing the food, that we all have a turn to give thanks, and grounded in that thanks, also name our lament, and torn down by that lament, also name our gratitude. Who will be at the table as we pull ourselves back together? This Thanksgiving, there are empty tables and empty chairs. All of those who have died from COVID, all of those still recovering in hospitals, all of those lives that have been stolen by white supremacy, and all of the empty chairs of friends and family who could not travel to be with one another as they keep a loving distance from one another. That is the reality of our Thanksgiving table this year. And next year is a future unknown. That uncertainty is in some ways terrifying. No pandemic can be completely eradicated in a year, be it coronavirus, smallpox, be it racism, be it xenophobia. And yet, next year, like this year, we have the call to keep imagining a world where we all show up at the margins with humility and love and resources, sharing our gratitude, sharing our food, not for just one day, but sharing our food, our gratitude, our resources in a way where we can keep eating and singing at our various tables for years to come. Friends on the journey, we are in a season of gratitude, in a year of grief. And in this time of challenge, when so many of us are eating alone, it is nonetheless important for us to return to gratitude, to remember with love those dear ones that we cannot hug, to remember with deep appreciation the land that we live on, the land that grows our food, to remember with fierce solidarity all of the indigenous people of the Americas, remembering all of those that have been left out from the painting of the past. Friends on the journey, let us ground ourselves in gratitude so that next month, next year, and the 400 years that follow, we can return again and again to the table where we learn to piece ourselves back together in sweetness, with love. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. Our next hymn is number 128, For All That Is Our Life. We will be pasting the lyrics in the chat, so they won't be on the screen, but they will be on the chat if you open that up in a sidebar. Let us lift our voices in song.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks for all that is our life. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks for all that is our life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
We drink from wells we did not dig, and we sit in the shade of trees we did not plant. As recipients of all we have received from those who have come before us, we are called to share our abundance with those who will come after us. As a voluntary association, our church is sustained through the gifts of the members and friends of our congregation. Your generosity makes it possible for us to hold online worship services, workshops, and small groups, even during these unusual times. Your generosity allows us to be faithful stewards of our historic building so that it will continue to be a place of sanctuary and learning when it is once again safe to gather there together. Your generosity helps us strive for justice and live our congregation's values in the wider world. Today, we are sharing the plate. And if you recall in the past, our Thanksgiving service, we would ask members to bring food in and the food collected would go to the food pantry at Interfaith Social Services. It was one of my favorite parts of the church year when I would call the kids down and they would grab baskets and we would collect the food from the congregation and pile it up to the right of the pulpit. And then later David and other members of the congregation would drive it just down the street. So we are asking a second plate donation to Interfaith Social Services. They say that $5 will feed 25. So I'm hoping that we can all take a moment to visit the websites of our organization as well as the food pantry and consider clicking on the donate button.
Here at United First Parish Church, we gather in many ways to participate in the life and leadership of the congregation. Each week, our Director of Religious Education, Joan McDonald, prepares a children's chapel video that families, especially with younger children, are invited to watch in their own time. Those can be found through links on our UFPC website, and we've pasted a direct link into the chat there. So families in the congregation or folks who have little ones in your lives, you can go ahead and watch those every week or as you are able. As we mentioned before the offering, we are doing a food drive for Interfaith Social Services. And we are also doing a fundraiser for Father Bills in Mainspring, who run a homeless shelter and many other services in Quincy and throughout the South Shore. And they traditionally do a big Thanksgiving meal where their guests are invited to dine together. And this year they're having to do it very differently, which of course means it has increased expense. So if you are able to donate $5 or $50 to either of those local organizations, you will be helping our community, our wider community, be able to eat and to have that abundance shared with them. And my one other announcement to highlight is that as we continue online worship, the worship committee and I are seeking to expand our UFPC Zoom worship team. So that includes roles with Zoom on Sunday mornings, such as being our digital usher, like Clyde has been today, or running the slides like Joan has done today. We're also interested in having music made by congregants and having chalice lighters on Sunday morning. So if any of those things interest you, you can contact me or Jamie Grassman. And as we enter this holiday season, we are seeking photos of our United First Parish Church building and grounds, all decorated for the winter holidays or other holiday events we've had in the congregation. And we would love to have those in our slides on Sunday morning or our Facebook page and our website, so that we can remember and feel some of the beauty of being in our beloved sanctuary. And those pictures can be emailed to me. Thank you for the folks who have done that already. And now let us return again to that breath of life and love that is always there to ground and guide us. The words of our benediction are by Duke Gray. The blessing of truth be upon us. The power of love direct us and sustain us. And may the peace of this community preserve our going out and our coming in from this time forth until we meet again. May we go in peace and go in love to be a blessing to the world. Amen. And will you join me in singing Carry the Flame as we extinguish our chalices? We invite you to join us for our virtual social hour. We will have 2 breakout groups to discuss the questions What gratitude and what grief are you holding in your heart this Thanksgiving season? And we will also keep this main room open for folks who prefer a more unstructured conversation. So if you would like to discuss those prompts, accept the invitation to a breakout group. And if you prefer a more unstructured conversation, then decline that invitation for now. So let us go in peace as we join our hearts in conversation, and happy Thanksgiving, everyone. May you find that gratitude alongside the grief.
Guess we need to make sure that everybody can unmute. There we go. I think you can unmute.
Thank you.
It's like, oop, the final step.
Find everything, so it would have worked out. What's up, people?
Joan, that was beautiful. I loved your story about the bogs. That was really great.
I agree. Beautifully written, beautifully rendered. That was great, Joan. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I did watch that once. I did watch, a long time ago, the harvesting. I just stumbled upon it by chance when I was in Plymouth and saw that whole, how the cranberries are harvested up the big chute.
Really beautiful
That
colors.
technology. And
It's like, what do you call that? It's just like a giant vacuum cleaner. So
come to realize that cranberries were edible. I mean, it makes you wonder who was the first one to go into the bog and say, I wonder if this is any good.
but I don't think they were originally in bogs.
Oh,
I think that they're in bogs because it makes harvesting easier. I think
okay.
like pickable.
Yeah, we ran into some wild cranberries in the dunes in Provincetown.
Oh.
In a low area, there were all of these little cranberry bushes, and there were tiny cranberries. And we picked as many as we could and brought them home and made a tiny bit of cranberry sauce. It was really great, but it was so funny to see them kind of growing in their natural habitat.
Yeah, they flood where they grow because they float, so they can shake the bushes and they'll float up to the top, and they can just skim them off with those big suction things. But they can harvest it. I know way too much about cranberry harvesting that I really should know. You've seen those old fashioned, like it looked like scoops, but like with tines on, like big forks. They can use those if it's dry to like scoop them out, and you can use those for anything. But when they harvest them wet like that, they can only be used for things like cranberry sauce. They can't really use them whole because they get like kind of squishy. So, but it's a juggling act, because if they decide to do dry harvesting and then it rains, they're screwed. So the farmers have like a 50-50 shot at what they want to do every year. That's what I know about
With
cranberry.
all the poisonous berries there are, and who is the courageous person who first decided?
They don't taste very good on their own. They're really, really sour. And they
Bitter.
Yeah, and for years, cranberry juice was only people that would drink it were cranberry farmers, because they were used to the taste and they thought it was just like a novelty thing. And then somebody somewhere along the line came up with the idea of either mixing it with other juices or mixing it with sugar, and then suddenly it took off. You can't drink it on its own. It's way too sour.
Yeah.
I like mixing them with like apples to make apple pie, and then you get that tart part from the cranberries.
Yeah, I have a great recipe for a cranberry pecan pie.
Ooh.
It's very pretty, and it tastes really good too. So I think I was the only one having problems with sound. At 3 points during the service, the music, I didn't get to hear any of the music. I don't know if it's a setting or what, because nobody else seemed to have the problem.
I got kicked out. I couldn't get back. It took me a long time to get back in again.
Well, that took me, yeah, I got kicked out too. So I don't know, maybe that was part of it. It was just coincidental with the music. Yeah.
Brenda, where's your tech person today?
He took the day off.
You should say you've been thrown out of better places than this.
And I can't see when people are making those comments in the chat because I'm sharing the screen.
Mhm.
Don't touch anything because it will turn off the music.
Right, right. Huh. And you're on an iPad, right, Brenda?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
are you too, Lynn, or are you on a computer?
No, I have the computer, but my computer is literally 13 years old. It has seen better days. One of these days.
Yeah, any year before this was better days, I know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, anything.
Well, I like to rag on Big Pharma, but I have to give them a lot of credit for getting this vaccine out in a hurry.
Promising news. That's great.
I'm so getting cynical in my old age. I'm like, we don't have it yet. Let's not celebrate. Let's see what happens here. We don't, who knows what could happen tomorrow?
How about the courageous people who allowed themselves to be guinea pigs?
Mm.
They didn't
So-
get paid, did they?
The thing that makes me a little nervous, though, is there's no long-term outcomes from this. Like, it's such a weird virus that I don't know. And, you know, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but it makes me nervous how quickly it came along and what little kind of long-term follow-up there's been on it. But I think it's a good thing.
think one of it's actually kind of a benefit is that the virus does regionalize, and most of the people who are dealing with major populations are working on their own vaccines. So when vaccination becomes a normal routine part of your yearly vaccination, they will have multiple strains of vaccine combined into a yearly or
Like the flu.
biannual, something like that, vaccine that will be actually more capable of preventing multiple versions of it. So it's going to take a couple years before that's the way it works, but it will get there.
John read somewhere that there is a national shortage on dry ice. And of course, it's related to the companies cornering the market on dry ice to ship the vaccine and store it. So they must, you know, be pretty sure that they're ready for it to be shipped and mass produced. So
Yeah.
One thing about having to wear masks, et cetera, and being extra careful, socially distanced, I don't know one person who's had a cold this season.
Hmm.
You know,
Or the flu. I don't know anybody who's had a bad case of the flu.
you know, nothing.
Yeah.
although some people are sneezing.
That's just her daily sneeze.
I don't have my sweater on yet.
You know, they always say some, you know, women as they get older turn into their mothers. I am more and more turning to my father. I really don't know what that, but it's the weirdest thing because my whole life I always sneezed twice. That was it. And my dad would sneeze like 100 times if he sneezed once. And I'm turning, now I sneeze and I'll sneeze like 25 times in a row. I'm like, seriously? This is what I had to get from him? Achoo.
Yeah, when I sneeze for real, it's an entire body experience, and
Yep.
my eyeballs bulge out of my head, and my face turns red for 5 minutes afterwards. It's a serious thing. It's not like
Oh, no delicacy here, no.
no.
I always do just one giant sneeze,
Oh,
really loud, and I have to warn Liz because she gets mad at me
The-
because
the-
it scares her. I'm gonna sneeze. especially if we're in the car.
There's no
Oh,
escape.
man.
I have swerved off the road on a sneeze once. That was exciting. Wah!
I have a friend who is deaf who sneezes really, really loudly to the point where people come running because they think she's like being murdered, like it sounds like a scream. But the funny thing about it is she won't believe us. She'll always come up with some other excuse why people are upset. It's like, no, seriously, you sneeze like a foghorn. Really, really. No, that can't be it. Something else.
Well, in old age, Pat's cat is now deaf. So when she starts meowing or something, it's this horrible yelling, screeching sound that she doesn't know she's making.
Oh,
It sounds like she's being murdered all the time, tortured.
so what's everyone doing for Thanksgiving?
But we have a small bubble.
Nice.
Pat's sister and her brother-in-law and her other sister.
Nice. I got a free turkey
We
from
have-
a project that I'm on, so we're gonna cook that up and cook the sides that we like and just have lots of leftovers. And we're thinking of going to the day of mourning and in Plymouth, but we'll see how the day shakes out.
Yeah, just me, Art, and Stevie are going to Provincetown. That's it. Art ordered to Thanksgiving dinner from someplace, I don't know where, but I went to get the stuff that I like. I always have to have canned black olives and those little jars of pearl onions, which I could not find at the store. I went like 3 times. Like, I need my onions, people. I cannot have Thanksgiving without them.
Did you find them?
No, I didn't yet. I also, it's a pandemic. I don't want to go into 25 different stores. So I'm like, I went, it would have happened to be in the stores. I looked and nothing.
Did you try?
What if you go to a specialty store?
The liquor store,
Oh,
onions in your martini.
here we go.
Or what about that Alfredo's? That's not the name of it. The Italian place. They have
Like by Water
bakery
Street?
in what's that?
By Water Street over that way?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll check them out.
Yeah. What about you, Anita?
I'm going to Bethany's house. It'll be just the 4 of us.
Yep.
Bethany, Julia, and Tony. And I was complaining about it. And then she said, you should be so happy. Last year there were 40 people and you couldn't have Julia's attention all for yourself. You should be so happy.
Yeah.
And I didn't look at it that way, but it's true. It's true. So it'll be okay.
Yeah.
Bright side.
Eve, what are you doing?
I'm going to be by myself, but I'll be talking to my friend Ray on the phone later in the afternoon, I think.
Yeah. And Joan, are you with one of your kids?
No, the kids are all scattered. So either I would go up to my sister's or I would just stay home. And I'm kind of like waiting to see what happens.
Yeah.
Because New Hampshire's got, a rise just like Massachusetts does.
Yeah.
Not that either of us go anywhere or do anything, but we could still bump into it considering it just seems to be.
According to a map on CNN last night, only Vermont and Hawaii are lower than us. I've never heard of Vermont and Hawaii alone in kind of category together.
Well, at least in Hawaii, you have the nice weather so you can be outside still.
Right.
Right.
Well, we're all busting to break out, but if we can just hold out for another 4 or 5 months, looks like most of us will probably get vaccinated, I think.
Yeah. Jim and Jamie, what are you up to?
We have a couple of couples in our little neighborhood here, and we're gonna do socially distant little dinners together in our friend's barn, and it'll be nice. We're pretty much an isolation bubble out here. I'm one of the few people that even interacts with people in Boston at all, and I'm very careful when I'm there. So it should be, we're fine. I got tested on Monday because I had a medical procedure on Wednesday and I was negative then. So we've been careful. it'll be nice to be with a few people. It would be better if we could be with big family.
Brenda, what are you doing?
So it'll be John and me. I have a turkey. We'll make the fixings and live off of leftovers for a few days. John loves turkey. He could eat it all the time. So yeah, and then we'll Zoom. Like Steve will call and Zoom with John's family's in Hooksett, New Hampshire, and then mine's down in Pennsylvania. Yeah.
There was a New Yorker cartoon this week. It had a picture of a pilgrim woman holding a roasted turkey, talking to a friend, and she says, "Well, you said that my eagle tasted fishy, so I'm trying something different this year."
With a turkey.
There's one thing I like about wearing the mask. I've been going out for walks around the block, and on the cool days, it keeps my face warmer.
It does.
And I usually hate the cold weather, so that's one positive I found.
Yep, that's absolutely true.
Anybody know any tricks about when you're walking outside, how to keep your glasses from fogging? Because I've had a real hard time with that. And I've been, my vision is good enough that for a walk, I can dispense with my glasses, but I don't really prefer to do that.
Yeah, the only good way to do that is to really seal up your nose, the contact of your mask to your nose. And I bought some that have an additional flap on them that goes kind of under your glasses and conforms to my face, and it actually works.
Where did you find them?
Yeah.
Online. It's a company called Stark Vacuums. It was a vacuum company that started making masks early on in the pandemic, and I thought, oh, this isn't really going to work, and it does. So I've been
another do-it-yourselfer, and this was I saw this online from a surgeon who has to use, when they are in surgery and their glasses have the loops on it, those lenses, to put a Band-Aid. So buy the cloth Band-Aids, the large size that you would Band-Aid, not a square swab, but like a regular Band-Aid, and then put half of it on your paper mask and half of it on your skin. So the Band-Aid doesn't irritate your skin. And that, again, prevents that air from going up and fogging up your glasses. And then someone said, and I don't know the name of it, apparently women models, when they're wearing very revealing clothing, buy a special tape. Maybe theater people know about it. I don't know. That tape keeps the clothing in place, but is not irritating to the skin. And that tape, which I guess would be harder to get than a Band-Aid, also a strip of that across your bridge of your nose would help too.
Because that would be double stick, so it would stick to both the mask and your nose. Yeah.
So those were do-it-yourselfers kind of things.
So the thing is with the Band-Aid, to do it over the bridge of the nose, half on the skin and half, partially on the skin and partially on the cloth of the mask.
Right. So it's only going to last. Yeah, it's only going to last you one.
Oh, sure.
One use, and you're going to have to, reapply the Band-Aids, but
sure.
Better than nothing.
My modeling days is long behind. Oh, sorry, my modeling days is long behind me. But actually, when you mentioned that, I totally forgot. I do have some of that two-sided tape. It's called body dressing tape. Just because it keeps, if you don't have a dress that shows stuff, you put that on there. Not that I would ever do wear hoochie things like that, but if I did, I would have it.
Yeah, the other gimmick that I've heard about is you can wash your glasses with soapy water and not rinse them off, and then let it air dry, and that'll keep the just like what divers do to put soap on their masks. That'll last for a while.
Baby shampoo, so it doesn't irritate.
Yeah, baby shampoo is good.
Or saliva. That's the trick I learned in Boy Scouts. You rub them with saliva.
Baby lasts a lot longer than saliva.
Is that what cat crap is?
Yeah, there's a product called cat crap that you can get at outdoor stores for goggles and glasses fogging up in the winter for outdoor sports, but I don't know if that works.
I think it's better to seal off the air.
Yeah. What I don't recommend, I went to the eye doctor last week and she said, oh, are you having trouble with your glasses fogging up? I said, during the exam, and I said, yeah. So she put tape, like that surgical tape. Don't do that. It's really sticky and it hurt taking it off. So do not recommend that.
Yeah.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanksgiving.
I have to go too. Bye.
Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Back. No, I'm coming back. Everybody's leaving. Bye.
You know, I thought the service was uplifting in a very wonderful way because it didn't shy away and actually affirm difficulty and pain, just like throughout. And that had a different kind of uplift than if everything had been positive and cheery. And I really, in your story, Joan, in Rebecca's reading and sermon, it just was very, very nice. I really appreciated it.
Really can't avoid the fact that there are things that are really crappy right now. And I think to not shy away from that is good, to just acknowledge it.
And I was with a group of DREs via Zoom that we have like a monthly gathering, and one of the religious educators did a particular kind of exercise using a Mary Oliver poem, which was the one that I used her first verse from. But I think we all were struck by how do you feel joyful when everything sucks? and how do you feel not guilty when you find something beautiful or joyful or whatever? And so it just seemed like that's kind of where we are in, like, understanding that you need those moments, and that we don't always have to feel horrible and bad about everything that's going on.
So it's a very nice balance.
Yeah. I think I read the Globe this morning, and if I'm not mistaken, there's a new collection of Mary Oliver poems out that's in the bestsellers list now. I forget what the name of the book is, and maybe, I don't know if it's new poems or just a new collection of her poems, but yeah.
There was a comprehensive collection of her poems out a couple of years ago. We bought it for Susie, remember? So I wonder if it's just had kind of a resurgence of people buying it, or if there's a new one. Yeah,
maybe somebody found a bunch of posthumous stuff to publish.
Yeah. Don't know.
Yeah.
So is anybody baking for the holidays? Yeah. Oh, cheesecake, Jim?
I did 2 pumpkin cheesecakes and a regular cheesecake yesterday, and I'm doing a key lime cheesecake today.
Wow.
Wonderful.
Wow. Very nice.
My sister just sent me a copy of my mother's date nut bread recipe, and it was
that's good.
Bread that we had every holiday as a kid, and I love it. So I'm gonna try making it for the holiday. Yeah,
I love date nut bread.
Yeah.
Find it anymore, so you have to bake it yourself.
Right.
And it's never quite the same.
Yeah. Well, wish me luck.
You're a good baker. You'll be fine. You can follow. The question is if it's an old timey recipe, sometimes there are just things that they did or knew to do that didn't make it onto the note card. That's the problem with some of those older recipes.
No, I think it's all there. And the big thing is soaking the dates with vegetable, no, what's that? Like, not lard, but the vegetable version of lard.
Crisco.
Shortening.
In boiling water. So you soak it in that for quite a while.
We use butter.
Yeah,
Some of the-
we'll use something other than Crisco, but that was that's I think the key step that might not be in the.
My job is greasing and dusting the pans.
Yeah.
Oh.
The recipes that try to like just get it all out there, they'll just say add this much butter. Butter is such a different animal if it's room temperature, if it's cold, if you cream it, or if it's melted. It completely changes everything, no matter how you put it in. And it just says add butter. And like, how do you want it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What about you, Brenda? What are you making?
Well, I think just because I'm in the mood for one, at least I'm making a pecan pie for sure. And then I think I'll make a pumpkin pie too. And I just heard something I've been trolling through websites. And so I learned something interesting about a recommendation for making pumpkin pies, which is, pumpkin pies, as far as consistency is concerned, are best eaten the day you make them. The crust stays crisper. But the pie filling itself is generally better the second day because the spices have had a chance to marry and mingle. So their recommendation is mix up the filling the day before, put it in the refrigerator overnight, the spices will blend, and then pour it into the crust and actually bake it the day you're going to serve it. So I will try this technique. Yeah.
Do you make your own crusts?
I would say probably 2/3 of the time I make my own, and 1/3 of the time I get lazy and I buy something, but I'll make my own this time. And candidly, for those of you who are, lard crusts are absolutely the best. They're the lightest and the flakiest. I think there's lard at Stop and Shop. I haven't looked for it yet, but I will, I probably will splurge and see if I can find some lard. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can usually get it in the refrigerator section next to the butter, I think, because it's usually in a big square.
Yeah. And I think it's in more ethnic markets, but actually I have to say Stop and Shop has been doing a better job of, I think, getting in more ethnic foods. So you can often find something there, but yeah. And then it's a matter of like, you have your traditional dishes, but like when it's just two of you, like how many do you make and not be ridiculous. So, but yeah.
Great.
Well, we're gonna have 4 pies and some mini cupcake-sized little pies, and that's just for us two. So we'll be sharing. I already started with 4 pies.
Told you. Well, some nice news. My buddy Chuck, the one who's formerly homeless Chuck, he is going to go have dinner with a small group from his family. It'd be his first time not having Thanksgiving dinner in a shelter in 19 years.
Wow.
So this is a really big deal for him. He's very emotional about this whole thing. And
oh, that's great. That is so great.
So nice. Janice and Carl were getting rid of some stuff from her father's house. And she was going to throw it away. And I grabbed her. I said, can I have it? So they were really nice. They went and they packed everything up in the truck, brought it to Art's house. And we brought it to Chuck. Now he has a coffee table and like all this stuff. And he was so happy. He called me 3 times the night I brought the coffee table over to tell him everything he was putting on the coffee table. I put my cup of tea on there. And he called back an hour later. I put my glasses on there and then I could find them later. I was like, this is great. Then he called me a little later. I put my feet up on it and I fell asleep. I'm like, this is really great, Chuck, but really I don't need to hear everything you do with your coffee table. But
does he have needs for other things?
Right.
I was going to put out on Facebook. See, that was really good. They give a nice bookcase, a rocking chair. I mean, it really, like he said, it made this not a space, but a home now. But he needs curtains and maybe some artwork for the walls. The walls are very bland and it needs something. So I'll ask if people have something, just something in the garage or an attic they don't need anymore.
What about kitchen stuff?
No, he has all that. He's not a big cook, but he has enough. He wanted a potato masher. I got him that and a couple other things. I'm after him to learn how to cook because he wastes a lot of money buying prepared foods and he doesn't, EBT only goes so far and he has a big appetite. So he'll buy like boxes and boxes of Hot Pockets and stuff. I'm like, dude, I mean, I should be the last person giving somebody nutritional advice, but dude, really, you don't want to be eating Hot Pockets all the time. Learn to make like one or two little things that you can make on your own.
Yeah. Just because they're easy doesn't mean they're not expensive.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna go work on our fireplace surround. Someday it will be finished and we'll be able to enjoy it, but for now, we have more work to do.
All right.
But everybody have a happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
Same to you.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Have a good week.